Hello there everyone, and welcome to another edition of Lydia's Crafty Corner with me, Lydia, in my little crafty corner. So today we are going to be creating this fun card where we have a beautiful scene in the front that you can kind of look through a window to see. So to start with, I'm going to be using the cute camper die set. This is very, very cute. And to cut out most of the elements, I am going to be using a piece of white cardstock that we have some of the Altenew double-sided adhesive on. So I have that, and I'm going to cut all of the kind of little elements on this. So this is in theory going to make these into little cardstock stickers. That way I'm going to be able to stick these down into place really quickly and easily. Some of the images in here are pretty small, so I do find the easiest way to get around that is to cut these out of double-sided adhesive. So you just don't have to worry about putting adhesive on them afterwards. So as you can see, I've got all of the little pieces on there, and then the top and bottom pieces of the camper as well. The only thing that I'm not cutting out is the base layer, so that means I can stick that up on to some foam tape to add some dimension on later on. So I don't need to cut the base layer out of that double-sided adhesive sheet that we have, and I can save that for future projects. So as you can see, I'm just going to cut that out of just some normal cardstock there. So once that has been done, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to add all of these various pieces onto my sticky mat just when I need them. So I have the base layer, and then I have the top and bottom here. I love the fact that if we have a solid piece, it does have a little hole in there, so you can easily get your tweezers in there and make sure that you can pop that image out. On some of these pieces, we do have a little bit of embossing, which I do find adds a lot to the design. So for the little window pieces, I am going to be using some of the Arctic ink from Altenew. So I'm just going to kind of figure out where the window is going to be on the base layer just by lining up that bottom piece, and I'm just going to add some of that Arctic behind there. Now this is a step that you don't need to do. You could definitely just leave that white, but I wanted to add in a little bit of definition there. I also have some of the limestone ink, and I'm going to add that to the kind of hitch lock that we have at the front of the caravan or camper to add a little bit of shadow to the white pieces that I'm going to keep white on this little caravan. I am going to add some shadow just using that limestone. I'm using a small blending tool to do this, so I'm just going to add some of that shadow around the outside edge of the top piece of the caravan, and I'm also going to add it to the little door. So the caravan of the door that we have is white, so that's why I'm just going to be doing mine white. So I'm just adding that right around the outside edge of that piece there. So there are the kind of white pieces, so just adding that little shadow on there really does add a little bit of dimension. I do want to keep all of these kind of smaller pieces within the cardstock. I find that it makes it easier to ink these up, especially because these are quite small pieces. So I'm just going to pop them back into place, and it really does help that we have that double-sided adhesive sheet on the back because it kind of makes them grab on a little bit more. So I'm just adding those back into place to where they come from that piece of cardstock, and we have the little curtains here as well, so just popping that back into place. So on the little cluster of elements that we have, there is a little handle that you don't have to use if you don't want to, but I'm popping that into place onto the door without adding any ink to that there. So that's the kind of door element complete over to the side. For the rest of the kind of pieces that I want to be metal, I'm going to be using the silver stone ink. So a lot of those elements that we have there, I'm doing in that silver. But we do have two little wheels or tires on there, and I'm going to be doing those in the jet black ink. I'm going to use a little MIDI micro blending brush just to add the dark black to those tires that we have. We have a little tiny one, and we also have a half circular one on there as well. For the curtains, I'm going to go with some green ones, and I'm going to start with the matcha tea. I love this green, and I'm trying to add more of the colour right at the edges and the top of those curtains to add a beautiful feel. I'm going to add a little bit of the swamp green just to add a little bit more shadow and interest to those curtains there. Once that's been done, I'm going to add the little tail light on using a little bit of the Snapdragon. I'm just adding that directly onto the base layer, but you could do that with the piece that you can cut as well. Now, for the bottom of my cute camper, I am going to have a pink one. So I'm going to be using the pink crystal to add the colour all the way over this piece. I just think this is such a fun look for a really cute and vintage camper. Once I've finished with the lighter colour, I am going to add a darker colour around the bottom and also the side pieces. For this, I'm going to be using the mauve. Again, I'm just using a mini blending tool just to add that in. Once I had done that, I wasn't happy with the kind of line that was created there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back in with the pink crystal and just blend along that edge just to make sure everything blends in a little bit better with each other. So once that had been done, that's all the colouring completed, but you could have definitely just cut this out of some coloured cardstock and popped it together as well. I just love the effect of kind of adding more dimension with ink, which you could also do to the coloured cardstock to add more dimensional effects. So what I'm going to do now is just to add all of the pieces together. This is really easy to pop together. We do have the layering guide on the packaging as well. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to remove the backing pieces off the double-sided adhesive sheet and then pop them into place. So I have the bottom of the caravan on first. I find that's the easiest one to do. And then the top piece, and that kind of covers the base layer. I then have the little door. So I'm just going to remove the backing off there. And this is going to line up along that kind of step piece that we have just popping out at the bottom. And I'm going to add this piece that has cut from the door back in. So we're kind of doing a little bit of a die inlay technique here, just to add that back into place. And that's going to be our two little elements into place there for the door. I'm then going to add in my little home decor. So my little curtains that are going to be peeking through the window, I'm going to add those into place. Again, a little bit of a die inlay technique going on here. And they are very cute when you pop them in. You don't have to add them if you don't want to as well, but I think it's just very sweet and it does add another touch of colour. I'm then going to add in the tyres. So we have two different tyres on here. We have the one that's at the bottom edge, and that's going to be the half tyre that you can see. And then we also have one on the jockey wheel. So I've added the tyre piece on, which we did with the jet black. And then we also have the little hubcap on there as well, and I did this with the Silverstone, so we have a grey one, and I'm just going to pop that into place onto that half circular piece as well. Just layer that up and make sure that that's nicely stuck down. If you do find that yours aren't sticking down properly, it may be because you need to let your ink blending dry a little bit more. I'm then going to add in the little tiny one on the front, and that's just going to stick on there perfectly. And then we also have another bar which is going to just sturdy up this front piece as well. So I'm just going to add that into place. And then we also have the step right at the bottom of the door. So I'm just going to pop that into place as well. Once that has been done, that is our little cute camper all ready to go on its little travels. So I'm just going to pop that over to the side and I'm going to work on my background. I am using the waterfall scene stencil. This is so cool. I just love this. I am going to start with the first stencil and I'm just going to pop that into place onto a panel. The panel I'm using is 4 1/4 by 5.5. The first colour I'm going to use is the matcha tea, and I'm just going to colour in these kind of bushes or trees that we have at the top here. Now what I'm trying to do with this is I am trying to add more of the colour or the ink at the base of this, so it's going to kind of give us more dimension and interest. So I am covering that whole piece up with the matcha tea ink, but again, like I said, trying to add more shadow to the bottom. I then wanted to add a little bit more texture to this. So what I'm doing is I'm taking my ink blending tool, I'm inking it up, and then I'm just like tapping it down. It's going to leave kind of a really cool texture. And when this dries, the circle images kind of go out a little bit. So don't worry too much about those circle elements. It is going to give you a really cool, subtle touch of texture on your ink blending. I'm then going to remove the stencil, move it up, and pop that into place. And the color that I'm going to be using for the rocks is Sand Dunes. So this is a really beautiful kind of light tan color. And again, I'm using a mini blending tool to add the ink through the stencil. There are times where you need to hold this stencil down a little bit with your finger, as some of the kind of connecting pieces are a little bit delicate. So I just tend to just hold them down with my finger and move the blending brushes up and down rather than in circular motion, so it doesn't move them too much. So I am going with this and trying to add all of that color all the way over the open spaces that we have on the stencil. Again, this is the Sand Dune inks. I just really like this one. It is a beautiful neutral tone, and you can see how cool this is going to look even at this level here. And we have plenty more of these stencils to add in. So I'm trying to add more of the ink to the kind of images that are in the foreground. So the things that are in front of you are going to have more color than the ones that are further away. And then I'm going to do the same technique as before that I just did with the bushes at the top. I'm taking that ink and I'm dabbing this to add those bristle marks to kind of act like a stony texture on this. So before I was hoping to get a leafy texture, this time a stony texture. So that was the sand dunes. I then wanted to add that textured stippling effect a little bit more. So I'm going to use some of the Rocky Shore ink just over the sand dunes, and I'm not swirling this around as you would normally with ink blending. I am tapping that down to add that color into place. So once I'm happy with the amount of kind of texture that we have there, I will remove this stencil and we're then going to move on to the next one. I'm just going to pull that away from that sticky mat and you can see just how cool that's looking already. I'm then going to take stencil number 2 and I'm just going to pop in the bushes in first. So this time I'm going to be using the swamp green. And again, as before, I'm trying to add this color all the way over the open area, but add more of it at the base. So we're going to get that kind of highlight at the top of the bushes there. And again, I'm adding a little bit of texture to this, just using the same color and just dabbing that ink into place. I just love how this is turning out. It just makes me so happy that we have these layering stencils that can create beautiful scenes, and it's going to make me look like an artist, and I just love it so much. So I have removed the stencil and then moved it up so I have the kind of stone pieces in place now. So first up, I am going to use that Rocky Shore ink to add all of the ink through the open areas of the stencil. If you wanted to, you could use a number of different colors of ink to get that really kind of mottled stone effect if you really wanted to. But at the minute, I'm just going to go in with the Rocky Shore ink. This time around, we don't have many of those kind of movable areas on here, so I didn't really have to hold a lot of the stencil down. So once I had then finished with the Rocky Shore, I'm then going to go up another shade of ink, and this is the Mocha, and I'm just going to add some of those little kind of textured dabs into place onto this layer of the stencil here to add in those darker points, or kind of, I don't know, rivets to the stone, kind of in bits and out bits, just to add a more natural look to it, because I didn't want it too smooth. So that's why I'm trying to add a little bit of texture, but it's very subtle this time. I'm then going to add in stencil number 3, and we're going to be finishing off the bushes that we have at the top. And for this time, I have the Oak Moss ink. I love this really beautiful dark vintage type green. It is very beautiful. So once I have finished with that, again, I'm going to remove the stencil and I'm just going to move that up slightly to add in the third layer to the rocks. So the first time I'm going to go in with the Mocha ink, again trying to add more of that kind of really dark, deep color to the front or the foreground, and then a little bit of less of the ink in the bits that are going to be further away from us, so in the background. So that is the Mocha ink there. So I'm just going to add the lid onto that one. I'm then going to take some of the espresso, again using the same blending tool, and I'm just going to dab some of that really dark colour around into places where I think would be a little bit darker. So once that has been done, I'm then going to remove this stencil, and then we're going to move on to stencil number 4. I just has some more greenery on. So the first one that I am going to use is the Misty Sage ink to add in the smaller little bushes that we have at the tops of the waterfalls and also at the side there. Once I've finished with the Misty Sage, what I'm going to do is I'm going to remove the stencil and I'm going to move that slightly over to the left, and this is going to add in the second layer to the little bushes that we've just done. And this time around I am going to be using the Mossy Meadow ink. I am loving this kind of combination of two different greens on here with those browns. It's very natural looking. So once I finish with that, I'm just going to move on to stencil number 5. Now this is going to add in our final layer to the bushes, and I'm going to be using green opal just to add in that really dark spots on these areas here. We then have the kind of a singular layer for the water. So this is just going to add in the kind of water pieces, and the white that's going to be shown through is going to give that effect of like foam or fast flowing water. I'm going to use Arctic for this, and we also have that sky piece, which I'm just going to do in exactly the same color. So again, this is the Arctic that I'm using here, and I am going pretty quick with this. I didn't want to have a really dark blue color here. I want it to be kind of wishy-washy, so I didn't spend too much time on that to add the color through there. But once that's done, I have my piece all ready to go. I then wanted to create a frame that we can kind of look through to look at the scene. So what I'm going to do is I am going to take a ruler and I am going to mark off 3/4 of an inch around each of the edges, and this is going to be how big my frame is going to be. I am trying to check to see that I haven't got ink on the other side of it, because I notoriously do that. So I'm just making sure that we have enough space in that centerpiece so the image can be seen. I'm then going to take my comfy cut and I'm just going to go around the edges and then stop when we get to the lines that cross each other, because I don't want to go over those. I just want to cut the inside of the frame. So I am using a ruler that has a metal edge on it, and I'm just butting up my comfy cut along that metal edge and then drawing that knife down to create a really perfect cut. I am using a thicker piece of cardstock for this, so I did need to go over that cut line a couple of times just to make sure I went through. But if I was using thinner cardstock like I normally do for everything else, it would have probably gone through the first time. Sometimes you do need to go really again on the corners just to make sure that you have those cuts really connecting with each other. So I'm just going around making sure that I don't pull this out and tear anything. I do want those clean lines, and that's why I'm using my comfy cut here. So once that's done, I am going to be using the Fabulous Elegant Greetings, and these are very, very pretty, and they have lots of different sentiments in here to use for many different occasions. So I'm just going to make sure that I have one that kind of goes with my traveling theme and is going to fit perfectly on the bottom edge of that frame that we've just cut. I'm using the obsidian ink just to stamp that into place right at the bottom there. Once that has been done, I'm then going to add this frame onto the kind of stenciled panel that we have with the stenciled scene. To add a little bit of dimension, I do have the instant dimension foam tape that I've popped all the way around that frame piece there. I'm just going to pop that into place. Now, when I stenciled my scene, it wasn't centered correctly, so I do need to go around with this and cut that out. I did trim down my frame piece a little as well, just to add a little bit of a border around the outside edge when I do pop this down onto my card base. But you don't have to if you don't want to. It's completely up to you if you want the frame all the way over the card base or not. So I did get rid of 1/4 of an inch off the top and the side for my frame. So once that's done, I'm going to grab my card base and I'm just going to add this whole piece down nice and flat onto the card base. So I'm using some of the ultra sticky tape from Altenew just to make sure that that's in place. These tweezers work really well with getting the backing off as well. So if you are having a little bit of trouble like I was today with my nails, those tweezers are the perfect companion to really help you out with that. I'm then going to pop my little camper into place, but I do want it to sit a little bit more proud than the frame. So I'm doubling up the instant dimension foam tape so we can make sure that that little caravan is going to stick a little bit further away from the card. So I'm just going to pop that into place and it looks like it's ready, set up to enjoy the views that we have behind it. So here is the card complete. I really do hope that you've enjoyed the video and that you like the card as well. If you do create a card that was inspired by this, it would be great if you do share because we'd love to see. Thank you so much for watching, everyone, and we'll see you again really, really soon. Bye-bye. Hey there, Lydia here. I really do hope that you've just enjoyed the video. If so, please subscribe to the Altenew YouTube channel. Also, turn on the notification bell so you can get your daily dose of crafty techniques and tutorials just like this. Thank you so much for watching. Bye-bye.